Follow stage.
Right. Playing musical chairs up here. Well, we'll get started here. So thanks for joining us for our session on healthcare innovations. And we're getting near the end of our Global Entrepreneurship Week. So nice to see you again for the students that were here on Tuesday for our session with Sadie. But nice to have you back. And for those that have been joining us, I know John's been here most of the week, and same with Carol. But kind of kicking us off, today's session is all around innovations in the healthcare space and a variety of different solutions that we'll be looking at in basically both in the hospital system, but also in the life sciences, and then also outside of the home, but protecting the health of our citizens around the globe. And so how I want to tee up this conversation is one, we'll just kind of go down the line and we'll have Tag, Ishita, and then Nathan just do a high level, just kind of like what your business is and who you are. And then I want to follow that up with kind of our origin stories. But we got the one mic I can maybe pass with you, and then Ishita and Nathan, you can hand that one. So take it away, Tag.
Thank you, Cameron. My name is Neal, and I'm founder and CEO of TAGCarts. I'm a U.S. veteran and a Founder Institute alumni and Growth Factory friendly. And TAGCarts is pioneering wireless charging for healthcare. Our flagship product, TagX, wirelessly charges any brand or manufacturer of mobile medical cart or mobile medical equipment. And today's hospitals are plagued with over 8 miles of cords, and nurses use these carts to deliver medications, equipment, supplies, or the processing of data for electronic healthcare records. So the problem that we're solving is that they're currently plugging and unplugging cords or swapping batteries, and it's costing the hospitals $2 million or more per year. And that's what we're working on. So thank you.
Thank you, Cameron, for the invitation to be here. I'm really excited. I'm Ishita Shah, and I'm a scientist by training, specifically in molecular microbiology and infectious diseases. And I'm the co-founder and CEO of a UC Davis spin-out called Matrubials, where we are developing milk-inspired therapies for infectious diseases, starting with women's health. So antimicrobial resistance happens to be a global healthcare threat, which is kind of a slow tsunami looming upon us all, where common infections are now becoming increasingly drug resistant. And in women's healthcare, we haven't seen new solutions in over 50 years. This results in longer-term additional clinical complications, including reproductive issues. And we're trying to solve that with topical therapeutics that can reduce the burden of antibiotic-resistant infections. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Nathan Langley. I'm co-founder and CEO of RxGuardian and also a proud Sacramento State Entrepreneurship Program alumni. Stingers up. We develop and commercialize medication-safe storage devices for the home medicine cabinet, so locking caps for existing prescription bottles, medication lock boxes, and then Johnson & Johnson recently funded us to develop a child-resistant 7-day organizer, more for accidental poisonings. Our primary focus is on opioids and other controlled substances, and making sure those are safely stored in the home to help prevent misuse and abuse and accidental poisonings. While it's a very complex issue with many causes, you hear a lot about fentanyl, overdoses, and those sorts of things. A primary source is the home medicine cabinet, so we're just working to make the home a safer place.
Awesome. So I'll keep the mic with you and we'll work our way down there. And I would love to just dive into the origin stories of each of you bringing this new invention and innovation to life, and kind of what was the precipice for getting started, and what were some of those early steps you took in bringing this innovation and invention to life. So we'll just work our way down.
Sure. So the origins of RxGuardian was a friend of mine. His younger brother developed a substance use disorder involving opioids. And, unfortunately, it was not too long after his mom was in a bad car accident, and she had opioids readily available in the home. She didn't even like taking them herself, but she needed to. And so she never thought anybody else would actually desire to take them. And at this time, he was a curious teenager, and he took a couple pills, put the bottle back. She didn't notice. He actually he liked the way that felt, so he continued to experiment and even became the neighborhood lawnmower and was taking a few pills from those medicine cabinets as well. And by the time she did find out, he had developed a substance use disorder. He did have to go to treatment 3 or 4 times. There was a point where he transitioned to heroin as well, unfortunately. The good news is that he's sober today. He's married, has a family, so he's doing well, but we know not all stories end that way. She actually went to the extent of accusing the pharmacist of shorting her on her medications before she realized there was a problem in the home, which we found to be quite common. And we figure if there was something like one of our medication safe storage devices at the very beginning, one of 2 things would have happened. Either 1, maybe he would have saw a lock on the bottle and never experimented, or 2, at the end of the day, it is still a plastic bottle. He could have destroyed it, but at least she would have known at the very beginning, and there would have been that opportunity for an early intervention and hopefully prevent things into developing into what they did. So we did some research and found that this was not a unique situation. 44.9% of all misuse and abuse originates in the home medicine cabinet. So while it's a very complex issue with many causes, that's the area that we're focused on, is the home medicine cabinet. Is that everything? Yeah, perfect.
So we're talking origin of the company, yeah? So the origin of Matrubials is at UC Davis. There's the Milk Bioactives program at UC Davis, where they have, for the last 20 years, focused on structure function analytics between human milk and the impact it has on maternal health and infant health. About 10 years ago, I joined the Foods for Health Institute at UC Davis. And my job was to try and make connections between human milk components and how it can impact infectious outcomes. During that process, we made some discoveries with specific components that are existing in natural human milk that actually can work like antibiotics, but without the side effects. And so we started with our quest of how can we translate this, how can we clinically vet it, how can we actually source this food component as an investigational new drug. And that led to the founding of Matrubials. So in a way, it kind of is entrepreneurship by occasion for me. I was in academic research all through my life, but when these discoveries came to us, we figured that instead of continuing to work on them as just an academic project, it is our way to give back to the community and figure out something that can actually make impact on human health and public health at a global scale. And so we looked into indications that can actually benefit from our discoveries, and we realized that very good maternal outcomes are dependent on good reproductive outcomes, where women are free from these rounds of infections that repeat themselves 3 or 4 times every year without antibiotics actually solving the problem at the root. And that's when we thought that the global impact of this is actually 1 billion women, so much more so in the US and elsewhere. And we started to look into the workflow for developing these peptides, growing them to the extent that they're de-risked enough so that they can actually then go through the FDA approvals of investigational new drug applications, which is the stage we are at right now, trying to make those applications and then get into clinical trials to develop what is going to be ideally a first-in-class and a best-in-class therapeutic for reducing the burden of vaginal infections that can then have reduced rates of miscarriages and preterm births in women of reproductive ages. So, yeah, thank you.
TAGCarts was started because I sold medical cards to hospitals and served nurses with my existing company. And no matter what type of carts I sold, I was still part of the problem. They still didn't like the, they're like, oh, these are real nice, but they're like, but we really hate plugging these things in. Or now they've given us these batteries and I have to swap, from the nursing station on that side of the room down to the cart on this side of the room. So it really came out of a desire as a salesperson to not want to be part of the problem and have a product that was there. I started out wanting to design again, I have another company that sells carts for multiple manufacturers, and that allowed me to offer you multiple carts. But I felt I could design a better cart and build that business better. So as I looked into that and I talked to nurses over and over and clinical staff and said, I want to build the best medical cart ever. And we have now. It's called the Tahoe, and the top is made of recycled water bottles and fishing nets, and it's assembled by veterans at Pride Industries. and it's everything we wanted it to be. But a nurse around 2017, before we built this, said, hey, that's really great, you want to do that. But if you want to solve a real problem, these cords are a problem. So as I listened to her and others say the same thing over and over, I noticed something on the wall that was omnipresent, and it was a handrail or wall protection, a wall rail. And I said, well, what is that? And what is it doing there? And it's literally on every linear feet of every wall of every hospital or healthcare facility. And I said, could it be doing more? And Wendy said, yeah, I think it could. So that's where our intellectual property and patent came from, is using an existing piece of infrastructure and making it smart. And that's our new product, the TagX Smart Rail. So it really started from listening, but I have to tell you, when I wanted to file intellectual property, looking at the cost of that around 2015, my wife and I'll say, discerned not to put in the investment for that. It was about a year later at a street barbecue where the nurse that I'm speaking of came up to my wife and said, hey, that idea, that's a really good idea. And it's really come a long way. And my wife goes, oh, okay, you think so? So apparently if somebody else validates that, so then we started filing our intellectual property in 2016 or 17. And I've been blessed with my wife's support ever since. So that's kind of
the future is female, so you needed that endorsement.
Yes, I did need that.
I love that. I think just one highlight, and then want to dive into, do all of you have gone through like the patenting process? Yeah, awesome. So I think we'll dive into there next, but just wanted to highlight the focus on solving a problem and like whose problem that is. We've talked about identifying the needs in the class, and like hearing that from our users and customers is a real key element. So wanted to elevate that. Maybe I'll start with Ishita, and then we'll go Tag, and then Nathan on this. So I'd love to hear about kind of your pathway to patenting. We've talked about that in this in our class here. What does that kind of roadmap look like, and what were some of the, obviously it doesn't seem like an easy process, so what were some of the like pain points along that process, and how did you take steps forward, and what resources did you tap into along that process? And I know, you have UC Davis as a partner in some of that as well, but for those that didn't necessarily have a university partner.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Our initial discoveries, and therefore the IP, is through UC Davis. And when we first put in the IP application, that's when we founded the company, because we as inventors of that project or that innovation wanted to have the benefit of translating that research as well. So we founded the company, and then what is referred to as a letter agreement is what you sign with the university, and the letter agreement gives you further opportunity to explore that research even while being at the company. And then as you continue to meet more milestones and progress in that research, it gets converted to an option agreement where you exclusively work with that research and advance it. We are at that stage where we have entered into a licensing negotiation with the university, and that comes with its own term sheet, and that can vary depending on what the innovation is and what stage it is at. Since then, we've also, once we started getting investments of our own at the company and were able to develop research independent of the university resources, we then filed our own IP, and we have done 2 of those now. And that allows us to independently continue to work and collaborate and explore additional ways to translate that work too. So yeah, there's both of those that we've done so far. And it's just, I think from my opinion, it's great to build intellectual property, because that gives you the strength to continue to build your unique innovation and advance it. But it also sort of separates you from other people and protect your own discoveries, so that it's a wide range where somebody won't just change one amino acid in the molecule that you're working at and call it their own innovation. So it's really crucial to have that protection as part of building a new startup company and growing it. And then, hoping that when the actual patent gets granted, you still have many more years to work with, and it's not just 5 years to get, because every patent has the life cycle of about 20 years before companies that make generic products can start building that same molecule in theory. So I think one of the things I dislike about the process is the time it takes to get the patent granted, from when you first file a provisional application, and then you get 12 months to file either the PCT application, which allows you to then have that innovation protected in sort of a global sense. And then you start with the national phase filings in the different countries, and it's just a really, really long process. But other than that, I think it's absolutely essential. It's crucial for continuing to develop it through non-dilutive grant funding, but also through institutional funds and VCs. And the first question typically we will get as part of anybody who may be wanting to have a conversation regarding an investment is like, what's your IP status? And rightly so, because IP is a way that they can envision some sort of ROI to the investments that they're making in you. But yeah, it's certainly a very exciting process, I would say. Every time you put in an application, I'm actually working on one right now that's going to go tomorrow to the agency. So from here, I'm going to go back on Teams call and answer some other questions with the lawyer. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to share is that the patents are important, but they can also be not important, right? Traction. So it's kind of, I think, is it jujitsu? What's the martial art where if you push, I pull, or if I push, you pull? Is that jujitsu? But it's kind of looking at your own gifts and then what's been given to you on the landscape to move forward. And if you have that ability, I would say if you're building a tangible product specifically, I would say it's very important. So, in any form or fashion, we'll be receiving our 4th patent on December 3rd, utility patent. And when you do, entrepreneurship is about what you say no to, really. It's opportunity costs all along the way that you're having to say no to. So my patents are not protected all over the world. And we developed them ourselves with an IP attorney here in Roseville, who did a very good job. And I would say, with all the jokes for attorneys, but I would honestly say the investment money we've spent on our intellectual property is the best investment money we've ever spent. Like your ideas get compounded. It's an attorney to client privilege. And they say, now, could the rail be doing this? And what about this? And you're like, and they say, no, that's all yours. That all belongs to you. So patents, you end up getting credit for these ideas where you may have had, 15 or 25% of the idea, and they expand that, and that all becomes your patent, whether you're the sole inventor or a team and who the assigned company is. We have probably 7 or 8 trademarks, but it's, I'd also warn it could be a wormhole, where one idea leads to the next idea. And again, it's what you say no to. There's so many things that I've wanted to patent, but in our case, we're looking at the rails of the hospital as, the new real estate to become smart, kind of like a patient head wall. So we are patent pending on a lot more than charging mobile medical equipment and carts, measurement of environmental controls, CO2, sensor traffic, patient traffic, bed traffic, touch screens, and a lot more. So you kind of get to or I think we've gotten to a point where it's like, okay, we have enough protection around this, and you need to focus on one thing, which our go-to-market is wireless charging. So, but again, the best money I ever spent, I think, as far as the investors' money that we've spent, has been on the intellectual property. But I can't really say that because we have not cashed in on that as much, but soon to come, right?
So the patent process for us, the first prescriptions, and did some research and realized that did not exist. So that was step 1. Does it already exist? And if it does already exist, is there something you can do better? And there's certain requirements, I don't have them all memorized, but how much more you'd have to change that design and improve that design to then file your own patents. And we talked about provisional patents as well, which a provisional patent is something that you can do with limited legal fees. It's more a high level of, this is what I'm looking to design, and that gives you a stake in the ground, and then it gives you 12 months to further along, get that design more nailed down before you file your actual patent. But why the provisional is really important as well is that also sets a stake in the ground from a timeline of the design. So what that means is when you file your patent, if it's whether 6 months, 12 months later, you can actually claim the date of your provisional patent. So if someone tries to interfere as you're going through with that, they actually already have that timeline set then. We did as much as we could on our own with the patents, but lawyers are really important, and having good lawyers is important for that. It can be very expensive. In fact, I don't know the inexpensive way, but they will help you in ways that you wouldn't otherwise have thought of. And one example of that is, so we have about 20 issued patents now, but we only have about 5 patent families. And so what I mean by that is we've done continuations on our patents. You have a window to improve on your claims and do those sorts of things once you get issued a patent. If you don't do the continuation, then it's set in stone with those particular patents. But I was looking at a product that I found in another industry that looked similar to us, and I talked to our lawyers about it. I said, hey, I kind of like this design. Is this something that could be applicable to where we're at? And can you do a patent search? And we're figuring out if we want to do anything on it, because it's a completely different industry. But it turns out, oh, that's your patent in a different industry. Like you're actually, they're infringing on your patent. Because it's funny, like, did anybody patent this? We're like, yeah, you did. It's like, okay, well, let's see if it's worth it to do anything, or if it makes sense. But from a process, one, does it already exist? If it does, can you do it better and change it enough to where you do actually have your own opportunity to file intellectual property? Provisional patent, really important. I think if you're not ready to file a patent, or you want to figure out if there is a market for it too, it gives you that time as well. And then, find good legal counsel to advise you and also help you through that patent process.
Do you have a follow-up?
I was just going to add one more thing. I don't know, but you also want to really test your idea before you file a patent. Maybe that's already been covered, but that's my thought, is that you really want to test your market over and over. So I think all of us had industry experience or firsthand experience and shared intellectual property through the university and research experience as a scientist. But you really want to, I wouldn't just rush to the attorney's office and say, I have an idea, let's spend $5,000 and file this patent. Really test your market and find out how valuable that is. And a lot of times that would improve the value of your idea and your invention.
That's a good segue. The next question I was going to tie to was access to capital. All of these take a lot of resources to get started, and would love to hear kind of were there government programs, SBIR, STTR, other types of programs that help to spur some of the development of the product, and then also in raising, private capital, how has any market signals helped in that process, and how have you kind of gone through that? We'll maybe just work our way down the line.
Yeah, initially I was already in the industry, so I'm a salesman has a better mousetrap, so to speak. So I knew a lot of the people in the industry, and they weren't very interested in going against the status quo. I mean, when you have a cash cow that's, even if it's planned obsolescence, which you're probably familiar with, but a sealed lead acid battery, if you're replacing those and you're a $500,000 company, you might have a line item of $10 million just replacing batteries. So before we mess that up, is this going to work? Is it going to be adopted, right? But we started off with our own money on the provisional and then the full U.S. utility patent application. And then there was, I don't think it's here now, but there was a local program called Founder Institute chapter in Sacramento that we went through that really helped us. And I think Growth Factory is that now for Sacramento. But and the Carlson Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation has a program. So one of those accelerator programs helped us get started, incorporate, and then we raised a round of funding for family and friends. We used a SAFE agreement initially. I don't know if we've gone in depth on that, but we used a SAFE agreement, which is being used for large sums of money nowadays too. So it's not just under $1 million. But that's a whole learning process itself, asking family and friends for money for your idea. So, you want to have some traction, but that's us. We just found out, it looks like we missed on our NIH SBIR grant, but we were very blessed to receive, I don't know if it's a grant, but the city of Sacramento we applied and they awarded us with a valuable sum. It cost money to put those grant applications together. So we won that funding, so to speak, so we didn't have to come up with the $10,000 or $20,000. And the business plan is beautiful. We have letters of support from GSEC here locally, Greater Sacramento Economic Council, UC San Diego Medical Center. So while we didn't get the award, we're going to find funding a different way. And we have the support of UC San Diego that really wants to do this wireless charging because it could save lives, right? But I would also, as far as funding and that, you're going to need money, but you want to be careful how much equity you're going to give away, right? So just be smart and wise about that, and any traction or early revenue you can get, especially if you're doing a digital startup or a SaaS company. I mean, a SaaS company, in my opinion, would probably have no excuse other than to start getting subscribers. Because if the people in the room around you don't want to subscribe, or wherever that market is, you need to start getting subscribers to that to show traction. But we're kind of staying put right there, Cameron. That's our funding for now. We're under $1 million, and we had some initial revenue on our first pilot, and the pilots in 2025 will bring us nominal revenue. I say under around $500,000, but we're developing specific use cases with those. So we're not opposed to raising more money or accepting money, especially if it was a CVC, which is corporate venture capital. So in my space, corporate venture capital in healthcare itself, you would have Kaiser Ventures, right, which also has 120 hospitals, Intermountain Healthcare. So hospitals have their own venture arm because they got, I guess, tired of seeing venture capitalists get all the money for their healthcare inventions. So some of them have their own venture arms. I'm sure UC Davis, University of California. So CVC would be, corporate venture capital would be an interesting opportunity. But other than that, I think we're going to be able to bootstrap from here and get into significant revenue and achieve the milestones we want to.
So we are a preclinical stage pre-revenue company, and since 2021 we've taken every opportunity we can at raising funds, because as an early stage biotech company, what we raise is what can be directly diverted into R&D milestones and getting our research to the stage we need to get either like a Series A round or further to get to the clinic. We started with accelerator programs. So right after we finished getting some early inputs as part of the FAST advisory program through California Life Sciences, in terms of like what could a business plan look like if we were trying to develop a topical product for women's health. We got into Y Combinator, and that ended up being our first check. It was not just an accelerator that gave money, but also trained a lot of our initial workflow in terms of learning how to speak, not just as a scientist, but also common language in terms of making those connections with meetings with venture capital firms, or just figuring out the ways of storytelling. But in addition to that, we also tapped into non-dilutive funding with the NIH. So we got a phase 1 SBIR grant from the NIAID, which is NIAID, which is for infectious diseases. And that helped us actually confirming our lead candidates molecules. So the way it works in early stage biotech is, if you are working with specific components, you start with a large pool of candidates that you think have there. And then you narrow that down to some of the top 1 or 2 or 3 candidates that you want to advance with further, because every molecule can cost up to several $1 billion to get to the clinic. So you have to be really careful with early stage research. The NIH phase 1 helped that, but in addition to that, we got a pilot study funded by the Gates Foundation, and that helped de-risk our technology to a much greater extent, because we were able to do a 30-patient study to evaluate and showcase that the technology that we were developing was in fact showcasing in those assays superiority to current standard of care antibiotics that prescriptions are giving to patients on the day of the visit. So essentially, we've spent most of the money that we have raised in de-risking our technology, making more milestones, and getting into stages where we can have additional conversations. We've raised some funds from angels, family, friends as well. So I've kind of taken every prong in that sense to get there. But we're obviously also currently fundraising to finish some of the last rounds of what is called as the IND enabling study that can be submitted to the FDA for approvals for clinical trials. And Growth Factory was a part of our first rounds as well, as part of our seed round, and we're very thankful for that.
Did you say you put through Y Combinator?
Yeah.
She said that like that's nothing. That's very impressive to even get into Y Combinator. And for anybody that isn't familiar and you want to learn about fundraising, their YouTube channel is the best YouTube channel you can watch about learning about fundraising and building traction and everything like that. So that was no idea. That's very impressive. With us, there was such a strong pain point with my partner's family that it was something that, fortunately they had some resources and had some experience with previous companies to where they were willing to help us bootstrap and get our initial funding. Or when I say get our initial funding, be our initial funding to get, a MVP, which is minimal viable product, and then our prototypes, and then even invest in tooling for us. Beyond that, we engaged with some angels. One way that we did that was a local accelerator program, which was at the time Velocity Venture Capital, which is now graduated to Impact Venture Capital. So we went through their accelerator program. For those of you that don't know what an accelerator program is, you have depending where you're at in your company, you have to apply, and they are generally take on, it depends on the size of the accelerator program, but 8 to 12 companies has been my experience on the scale. There's bigger ones. I don't know if there's many that are too much smaller, but what they'll do is take you through a 12-week or 6-month, or it varies in timeline, and you'll have one-on-one coaching from people who've been there and done that and get involved with venture capital and help you understand what it takes to raise funding. And generally at the end of it, the accelerator program, there's an event where they actually bring real investors and you pitch on a stage like this in front of an audience of where these people are looking to potentially invest in your company. And so we went through Velocity Venture Capital. We did get some funding after pitching at the end of that. And where we found the most luck in terms of investment is finding other type of investment events. It has been a bit challenging approaching funds one by one, but where we have found success is they do generally cost you a little bit of money, and you do have to get approved to present. But it'll get you in front of a lot of accredited investors finding these events. And it's kind of self-filtering in a way because you present your company and there might be a few hundred potential investors, but then they will come to you afterwards. So it kind of helps with the filtering process of finding investors. We are currently raising funding as well. So there's investment funds for every niche you can think of. We're primarily focused right now on ones that are looking at impact type investments. And so there are funds out there that are looking to, of course, they want to get a return, but they're also wanting to make a difference. And so that's been our experience, and we're actively going through it. And also, if you ever do go through the process, do not get demotivated, because it's not, there's a lot of people that will tell you no, but all it takes is one or two to tell you yes. And so just, stay on that track if you believe in it, see through the process.
I stopped counting after the first 100 no's as to how many there have been. But it is a very difficult thing to do in so many ways, because you're not used to rejection at that level all the time. And yet I think that comes from just the fact that the investor and your mission have to match. And if they don't, it's just not going to work out. But it's an exciting process, because it really builds the strengths in you that you did not know before existed, in terms of resilience and patience, and really also improvising in a way of how you communicate your mission to different groups of people.
Okay. Well, I'll open it up now for questions from you all. So we'd love to bring your thoughts and questions in here. What question? Yeah.
I got a good question. If you were to think about when you first started off in your process, based on the experience that you have today, what advice would you actually give yourself at the beginning?
I'm just going to repeat it because we are live streaming it, and I did get someone saying I didn't repeat the questions last time. So the question is about kind of what would you do differently, now that you're like, if you were to look back at getting started, what would you do differently in getting started? Was that?
Well, it's more so to learn from each one of you guys insight from your own personal experience. When you begin the process, if you think about the experience you have today and you look back at yourself when you first started, what was like one of the top advice that you would give yourself at that beginning entrepreneur?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very long book. Well, yeah,
Chapter 1.
the pandemic was a learning experience for all of us. So I know all of us up here as founders and entrepreneurs during the global pandemic, the world pretty much stopped. For me, I'll speak for myself. For me personally, I had just closed a very good size amount of money, and everyone told us to sit still. And so we did, but then I came up with an idea of the hero card, and we made a big impact with it. I'm very proud of that. I'm not in the emergency preparedness space, if you will, but it felt good to do so at the time. But I would say the reason I share that with you is that I would probably put a sticky note on my mirror that says, "You are the most distracted person in the world." Like the bright, shiny object, right? Like stay focused, get a coach, have accountability. And I would say tag that you yourself are your number one, I don't want to say enemy because I don't see it as an enemy, but seeing your own shortcomings and knowing that, I could easily be sent this direction or that direction or doing this. I think I would tell myself to be very aware of my own shortcomings. But again, that's not even chapter 1, man. No. Bright, shiny objects. Beware of bright, shiny objects. That would be it.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that in that sense that, what you come in learning at the start of the project is actually, now that you think about it, it's only 1% of what it eventually takes to get anywhere. And I just feel like I knew all these things before when I started. So it's really about just, enjoying the process a little more, which I think I've tried to do a lot, but yeah, I do feel like there could have been more openness to other types of learning as compared to not, and then that takes you in a different direction altogether. So I think just continuing to learn things from the process is sort of what I would keep at. And there's not that many things I can point out, not to sound strange, but I think we've done fairly well in terms of not hiring like too many people and burning our cash and having very little runway. Many things that have gone right for us. I would advise that we would continue to want to do it the same way and develop on those lines. But yeah, there isn't a single pinpoint lesson that I can say we could have done it differently, but just everything, just going through the process is really crucial, and keeping an open mind about it.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that a bit. So it's always important to remain ambitious, optimistic, unwavering in your faith that you will be successful, but you do need to enjoy the process because, and I guess maybe setting expectations as well. We thought we were going to put our product on the shelves, and it was, of course, everybody wants to protect their medications. That wasn't necessarily the case. We had to pivot our business model. So you have to be prepared to pivot and understand that you don't necessarily know everything. And you need to, and I think that's why it's so important as well, though, if you're going to go down this path of entrepreneurship, don't do it just for money. Well, you hear a lot of these success stories. You need to have a mission that you believe in, because you're going to get punched in the face a bunch of times. And if you don't believe in the mission and you get punched in the face, you'll just go find another way to make money. There's a million ways to make $1 million, but if you believe in what you're doing, you're going to power through. And so that's something I knew from the beginning, is to believe in what I was doing. But if you're looking at entrepreneurship as a way to make money, you're going to struggle a lot if it's not something you truly believe in. So. Yeah.
Yeah, Rich.
So I'm actually going to have to start pitching a lot for, and where are you going to, or where have you gone, or where are you finding places to pitch to, or people to pitch to?
So yeah, where are you finding places to pitch? And is that for investment or feedback or all of the above? For investment.
I think, Rich, you might be the most resourceful of all of us.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Like Rich is the mentor, coach, judge, and he's asking us. So this is Mr. Rich Foreman, everybody. 1 Million Cups, GFX, Carlson Center for Innovation, Angel Launch, I think it was, down in Santa Clara, Angel Launch. There's lots of different networks for the good of the order, not just Rich. There's lots of different networks you can find if you're willing and ready to pitch. But if you're in the pitch presentation stage, you're pitching everywhere. Anyone that will listen, because it takes practice, and you're going to learn from your pitch, and you're going to get those questions that really sharpen your business model, and like Nathan said, help you pivot a little bit. So you're pitching everywhere and often, but hopefully those are a couple good resources. And I also just want to echo what Nathan said. If you're being an entrepreneur to be rich, you won't get the 26.2 miles. You won't get there. There's got to be a why, and you got to be willing to get, as he said, punched in the face a lot. So hope that helps.
Probably not going to say anything you don't already know, Rich, but maybe for the rest of the audience. It's important to attend events like this. Stay involved in the community. There's lots of, events. Follow Cameron on LinkedIn, and you will find and you'll never know who you're going to meet. I think that's one of the biggest things that we've done, is just stay involved in the community, being resourceful with, how we approach things. Rich, there is one that we are looking to pitch at, Connectpreneur. That's Opus 8 is a one that it's one of the largest virtual. They do have in-person events, but there's one of the largest virtual opportunities. They do these rapid fire pitches that are 5 minutes. We're looking at investing in that because we've had some others have success in that area. So that's a very specific example. But I'd say the best thing is just to stay active, involved, be vulnerable too. Go to these events, not trying to impress anybody, but to be impressed and learn. And you'll be surprised. There's a lot of successful people out there too that want to give back and want to take someone under their wing. And I've been fortunate enough to meet some of those people in my journey, going in saying, hey, this is what I know. I understand there's a lot I don't know. Would you be willing to help me? And you'll find those people, and you'll be surprised at the spider web that happens. There's a lot of people that we have on our board of advisors, ironically, who is a Sac State alum, who is the previous director of DEA and head of Interpol. I can't map out how I got there, but it was just through attending many events. So, yeah.
And I know you know this, Rich, but just for some of the other students as well, is to try and attend more conferences that are specific to your subject matter, whether it's the technology or the audience that's going to be there. So, for example, ours is where we try to go to Women's Health Innovation Summit or Reproductive Health Innovation Summit or peptide therapeutics relevant to the work we are doing, because usually some of these conferences will have an innovation showcase for startup companies, and then that also goes through, of course, peer-reviewed selection. And if you do make it, you get a chance to present in front of an audience that is comprising of other founders, investors, strategic partner organizations, and so on and so forth. So even if those may not lead directly to a conversion of an investment, it helps them remember you if you keep showing progress year after year, so that in the future there can be an open conversation around a partnership as well. So that's one more to add.
Awesome. What other questions do we have? So we'll have Chris, and then Franklin and Bokel.
Hi, yes. So my name's Dr. Rogers, and I'm like the professor for this course. And obviously, this course about invention and entrepreneurship is very different from a traditional classroom or traditional teaching or learning methods you probably experience. So I was wondering if you could talk to everyone in this room about what was the difference when you were trying to be an inventor or an entrepreneur that's
keenly unique compared to your education up until that point?
So yeah, I think that I'll try to summarize that, which is a great question. So it's like, what is kind of the difference of being an inventor, entrepreneur, than kind of what you were trained in your like academic disciplines, so maybe what you did your undergrad or postdocs, and what was that kind of shift in skill set and knowledge base?
Yeah, I'll answer that. My undergraduate degree has nothing to do with what I did professionally. I found the world of sales. But mine's very simple. I was a subject matter expert by choice, by commitment. So I used to sell business machines. And when I left that industry and got into medical carts, I just fell in love. I could, any exit on the highway that had a blue H, I could get off, go inside and go to every department, and the carts are used in every department on every floor. And when I fell in love with that job, a lot of, it's not the sexiest sales job in healthcare. A lot of folks evolve to MRI machines or implantable devices, and I just never wanted to leave because I enjoyed seeing everybody in the hospital. So I would say, if I think I answer your question, Professor Rogers, my own inventor, creator, founder experience is just from being a committed subject matter expert. Like I said, a salesman that creates a better mousetrap. If you commit to any industry or anything, and keep your eyes open, and then I created something that can improve the environment I was already in.
So that's a great question. And in my mind, I think they're very different from each other, because when you're doing research or that's part of an invention, it could be for something that's not translatable immediately. It's really just to have that academic pursuit in place and make discoveries at that time. You could be working on that for 5 years or 15 years. Like in academia, we have professors who work on projects and further development of it for almost 3 decades without really ever translating it. But when we start to think of entrepreneurship, it really has to fit a business model. It has to be about what is the end use product? Why are you making it? Who's going to use it? Is there a real market need for it? Is it an unmet need? And who's going to pay for it? How are you going to get the money? All kinds of umbrella associated questions that are really crucial to developing a business, because even though there will be people in the world who want to do impact investing, at the end of the day, every investor wants their funds back. And if you're developing a project with the idea of making a product, it has to fit with the ROI model as well. So that's the crucial difference between a research-oriented invention versus, I think, entrepreneurial pursuits. And in my mind, they're quite different from each other. For me, this has been, in many ways, an excellent transition, because I've been a PhD and then a postdoc and then worked in corporate biotech for many years. And literally, it's just the last 3 years that I've started to think with sort of business hat. But the fact that I have long-term training, and as one can imagine in science too, there is just as many ups and downs. In a way, we get mentally prepared ahead of time to see those same kinds of ups and downs on the business side of life. And that's been really useful. So you don't get dejected as easily because you've seen a lot of downs. Like, for example, I'll just say, even if you publish one scientific manuscript that has maybe 7 figures and then 10 others in the supplemental, you probably have done 200 experiments to just finally get to those 7. And so it's the same way. It's just a different conversion lingo that we talk about here in business. Yeah.
It's okay. So from, I went through the entrepreneurship program here at Sac State, and I think, something that I learned post or actually during school, because I imagine a few people have had a similar or gone through this, but some positive, maybe negative experience, but I paid my way through college selling Cutco kitchen cutlery. And so, so some people have positive looks on it, some people not so much, but handling the word no, and something we just talked about, is going through the venture process, you're very optimistic. This is going to be the best thing ever, and you're going to have a lot of people shoot it down. And I think at the end of the day, though, there's 2 things. Don't let those people discourage you, but at the same time, you do want to be realistic and, don't be, really, is there an opportunity for this? And so I'd say that's kind of just the real world experience, is being prepared to take a few punches, and that doesn't mean that your idea is wrong. A lot of the most successful things in the world have been things that nobody thought was a good idea, but just really understanding the market opportunity for it and educating yourself on what you're doing, because there's a lot of things out there that that could be like a feature of something else, but it's being resilient. You're going to build calluses, and that's what I could say the difference between just the general invention when you're excited and designing, and then getting the product out there. I'd say as soon as you can is to vet that idea. Don't be too concerned about well, I haven't filed a patent or anything like that. If in fact, you might even, by sharing the idea, find a co-founder or find a partner. And actually, one of the things I was talking about to Cameron briefly about is what I learned about the Carlson Center today was that it's not just specific to the entrepreneurship program. It's open to the entire campus. And so if you're a student, this isn't, maybe I'm getting off topic a little bit, but what I would suggest is, you're probably really good at certain things, is finding someone on the other side of campus who might have your, be strong at your weaknesses. Being in a startup or an early stage company, you're going to have to wear a lot of hats, but at the same time, you don't want to try to do everything yourself. I'd say that's been actually one of my weaknesses as leader is, well, I can do this, but with, delegating and understanding how to build a team and, who's responsible for what. And so, a little off topic, but yeah.
Love it. I think they're learning all those skills in the class, so great job. Are these fairly quick, Franklin? Just because we're at time. So quick question, rapid fire. Is it for all of them or just one person? Because all right. So yeah, quick answers for you guys. So Franklin, take it.
I'm a market research guy, and I want to ask during your idea phase or your actual product development, right? How many pivots you get to take to get the product you have now, and during what point are your customers going to be like, oh, this is a better idea, a better step for my product or idea?
So rapid fire, kind of down the line of like customer discovery process and maybe some early pivots that you made.
We've done more pivots than Magic Johnson did in the NBA. So pivots is all day long. I mean, so early pivot, when we were putting up the rails at the hospital in New Mexico pilot, and they could only fit so many carts because our technology was spaced a certain part. And one of my advisors in Virginia said, well, what if you just flip the rails vertical? And I said, what? He said, I'll flip them vertical. And boom, we flipped them vertical and we got 4 within the 8-foot space. And so that's an example of a pivot that I didn't think of, but it was genius and they love it. And people go, oh, those look like Tesla chargers. But the number of those pivots is, again, long. But thank you for the question.
Thanks. I think for us, we've still stuck with women's health as our core mission, but what we've really done is made the decision that we're going to go the prescription route in clinical trials instead of initially being open to, can we just directly make a consumer product without clinical trials, but just solidifying more so rather than not.
So I'll kind of do a combination of both of those answers. From our mission standpoint, we haven't pivoted. Our mission has always been to save lives endangered by prescription drug abuse, and the way we do that is through medication-safe storage in the home. So we haven't changed our core mission, but how we approach that has changed many times. As many pivots as Magic Johnson possibly, but our products remain relatively the same while we've made better iterations of the product and brought new ones to market. The biggest pivots we've made is in our business model. We started in a consumer play, thinking that people are going to want to buy this, and what we found is that nobody thought what we were doing was a bad idea. It's just, with safe storage, many people didn't think it was going to happen to them, so they didn't think they needed it. They weren't going to go out and buy a seatbelt for their car, but the fact that it comes with one, they'll use it. And so what that kind of triggered in our mind is, okay, well, how can we get this into people's hands without them have to make that buying decision? Because the ones that are buying it have already had an issue, and it's our mission to prevent it from ever happening in the first place. So we've since pivoted towards, health plan reimbursement and even some legislative stuff, which is a very long path to market. But we've got some, other revenues that are bridging us through that. But the biggest pivots we've made are in our business model versus but stay true to the core mission.
Cool. Was yours quick?
It's quick.
All right, it is.
So all the groups in our class currently have some idea that we're working on, and you guys had ideas. You got to that stage where like I'm confident that this is going to solve a problem, and you took a dive in the entrepreneurship journey. So the question is, what steps or like approaches did you take to validate your idea and to like truly know that you're actually solving a problem?
Thanks, you guys. So the validation process and maybe that initial jump in to say, hey, I'm going to fully do this.
Yeah, I mean, one is this just a problem for you, or is it a problem for a lot of people? That was something that, we quickly had to, is this, your ideas generally start with a personal problem, but, looking at the market landscape, is this a problem for a lot of people? And if it's not for a lot of people, that could still be okay, but are they willing to pay a lot? So, there's like infant diseases that, while there might not be a lot of people with that problem, they're willing to pay a lot, therefore there is a true market opportunity with it. But yeah, I mean, I'll be just quick. So.
For us, it was continuing to validate our technology and trying to improvise it a lot better as part of the whole process of translation. And then working every other angle around it as well in terms of what's next in the workflow to get to the clinic.
Yeah, I would say if it's kind of a nuanced niche or a branch off a already proven record, then I would get it out there and get it going. If it's really against the grain or up current from what's the status quo from what's being done, we used a gentleman named Tim Keller in Invitopia at UC Davis to build a prototype because it was a tangible product. It was a cart. He got all the OTS off-the-shelf parts off Amazon, put it together, the cart's wirelessly charging on a rail, and we got it out in front of people and showed it to them. So I think it's Steve Jobs. I might misquote, but people don't know what they want until they see what they could possibly have. So get to your MVP or get to your product market fit as quickly as possible to validate the idea.
All right. And wrapping up, I'll steal from the Growth Factory, but what are you working on and how can this community help?
This community would be great. It seems we would love to have some opportunities with the local healthcare programs. So Sutter, UC Davis, Dignity Health, Kaiser we talked to, who more or less is in the Bay. But we have a lot of opportunities coming in, but sometimes in your own front yard, or your backyard, so to speak, that advantage, we'd really like to leverage that and have some opportunities to show Sacramento what other folks are interested in. So I guess we could use some help getting some introductions with innovation, and the folks over at UC Davis Medical Center or Sutter would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, for us, we're one of the few women's health-focused biotech companies in the greater Sacramento area. And as I continue to think, it takes a village to build anything from scratch. And we've so far continued to build it brick by brick, but with a lot of local support. And I want to ensure that continues ever which way. And then that way we can bring in more employment as we grow as a company too. So I would love to be building that here.
I mean, similar answers, but yeah, as I mentioned, we pivot our business model towards health plan reimbursement. And one of the things that some health plans have said, hey, this looks like an amazing idea. I get it. It makes sense how it can prevent adverse events. Other health plans, they say the same thing, but then there's a caveat. Well, how many of these do I need to buy, and what populations do I need to give them to? So we're doing some cost benefit analysis and looking at some market research. So we're open to engaging on those who might be able to support some of those efforts. And then ultimately, if you're in the entrepreneurship program, just keep creating in the community. Talk about this, just from a general standpoint. Always trying to build the Sacramento ecosystem as an entrepreneurial investor type thing. So yeah, that's it.
I have one last thing to that. To all the women in the crowd as well, we do need more female founders in this journey. So please keep a lookout for opportunities that come your way and try to take them as you please and grow your life accordingly. So I'll take that.
Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. Well, let's give it up for all of our panelists here. So thank you. Thank you for your awesome questions. Chris, were you going to do an announcement for the class or anything?
Oh, I probably will.
Okay. No? Awesome. Well, we will hop off the stage and say thank you again, and yeah, appreciate the time, energy, and support. So.
way then, class. See, you know, I love it when other people talk to you guys and further validate all my points. You know, at this point, you're gonna tired of hearing me, right? So you guys have a lot of the different announcements of what's due and stuff like that. So I want to give you a quick idea what the last, I guess, 2 weeks are going to look like. You know, next Tuesday, if you have class, because you will be with subject doing engineering stuff and making buildings, whatever you need to do, right? The last week,